it's important to look back before we go to COP25 or to pre-COP. Why are we here? Why are we discussing climate change 27 years after the adoption of the UNFCCC? We know that 100 companies are responsible for 70% of global emissions. That's 100 companies that have polluted more than billions and billions of individuals. The Aarhus Convention has a very beautiful guideline that speaks about the fact that when we promote public participation, we have to minimize inequalities, to facilitate participation of those most directly impacted, and to avoid undue economic and political influence. This is exactly what we needed 27 years ago so that we could all be doing something else rather than discussing climate change again. And so just 3 quick points expectation on the COP. There's been a long list already listed, but one that's very important is these guidelines on Article 6. That sounds technical, but what Article 6 is about is to create new mechanisms for the transfer of funds to support climate projects in different countries. And what's particularly important there is that it's the kind of mechanisms that create an incentive for investors that might disrespect the rights of local communities. So while we expect that the Paris Agreement promotes public participation, the first thing that we cannot tolerate as individuals, as civil society, is that it creates new mechanisms that actually harm communities instead of solving the problem. And there is a real risk that this happen. We know it because under the Kyoto Protocol, that's what happened. And 20 years later, there are communities that are impacted by projects that are funded as solutions under the Kyoto Protocol, despite the UN having said that there are human rights violations there. So we need social safeguards, access to remedies, grievance mechanisms under this project, so that whenever there is a problem in a project funded under the Paris Agreement, there is a way to block the funding and to avoid that investors can just come in and use the climate argument to put profits in front of people. Very briefly, the second dimension is really promote public participation in all of the climate policy planning. We've lost 27 years by not doing that, and now we really need to change gear. So we hope that as the COP25 sends a mandate for governments to enhance their national climate commitments, this enhancement means more buy-in from the public, more ownership of climate policies. And we know we've heard this from all of the decision makers. The greatest source of pressure right now for good public policies on climate change are the people in the streets, are the Fridays for Future and all of this mobilization. And if I can just finish with one final point, Escazú is critical, and COP25 offers us a great opportunity to put the spotlight. Not only because it goes to Santiago, where CEPAL is based, and to Chile, which has been the parent of the Escazú Agreement, but also because the Escazú Agreement is a light that really sheds hope for many human rights defenders across the world. At COP24, when we spoke about the Escazú Agreement, you should have seen the eyes of those fighting in Asia and fighting repression. They really saw that as the light towards which they wanted to aspire. And I can just finish by a very brief citation that someone else has cited earlier. Carol cited this one in a previous side event in relation to the Escazú Agreement. There is a local, let's say, poet that said we need to get up and stand up for our rights. And that's exactly what we need, because having spent more than a decade in the climate negotiations, I can tell you that governments are never going to bring the words of public participations and so on their own. So this is what we as civil society here really need to do now.